I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. So this is going to jump a little bit. Sorry, I'm throwing this up right at the last minute, and I'll tell you why here in just a minute. Just a few seconds. There we go. Okay. Well, boy, I sure stirred up a hornet's nest, but that's a good thing, I think. That's been my lot in life, as it turns out. Hello, everyone. Today is the 7th of May, 2021. I'm Roy Potter. I'm putting this up real quick this morning, again, because I don't want to interfere with David Knight. But Roosevelt got a hold of me. Of course, Roosevelt pushed me into, and not unwillingly on my part, to agree to put up my book on a website where you can go get it. And again, you can find that website on the playlist. Go to Reading the Crimson Thread, and in the description box for the playlist, you'll find a brief explanation and also the link to the free download of the book. And it's actually my manuscript, as I've explained. So it does have some errors in it, but they're not major, and it's not the book proof. But at any rate, it's there for you if you want to go pick that up. So anyway, Roosevelt sent me a tweet this morning explaining that he had found some information about how the Masons view Lucifer, and one of the explanations is that the Masons don't really worship Lucifer. That's a misnomer because the Isaiah quote where it talks about Hillel ben Shakar being um, uh, the bright star of the morning is actually referring to a king of Babylon, and it was just kind of roundabout way associated with what you would know as Satan or the devil, and that the actual star prophecy in Numbers and the mention of Jesus being the bright star of the morning in the New Testament is really who they worship. And this gets very convoluted because over time, so many things get polluted and corrupted that I realize that maybe I should have explained it. I kind of have in the past. I've often said that, and people get upset about it, but that there are, in fact, good Masons, groups of good Masons, and those who are bad, those who have chosen to use it for evil. So let me see if I can give a little background. In the reason why I mentioned my book as part of this video is because if you go into the bibliography, you will find books listed there that will help you to understand what I'm talking about this history of the Masonic movement. And I'm not going to go all the way back to Solomon and the Stonecutters and Hiram Abiff. I'm not going to go all the way back into that. And some of you are probably saying, what are you talking about? Well, that's why, because it's just too convoluted. I'm just going to mention it in passing. You can go look it up for yourselves. But at any rate, where did the current problems in masonry come from? And I'm going to give you a brief rundown of this. It's not going to be exhaustive, but it'll kind of show you. Again, I've said that there are two paths like there are in so many other things. Okay, we've talked about in all of my series about the corruption in the Christian church, for instance, the corruptions in government. I mean, you start out on a path, and eventually there's some evil person that's going to twist it and use it for their own purposes. Kabbalah is another example. Kabbalah didn't turn out to be the thing that so many people associate with today, and not all Kabbalah is bad. You have people that use it for good, and you have people that take it to the next step, almost a witchcraft, like Aleister Crowley did. Okay, and I could name some other people, but then that would start another fight, so I'm not going to do that. So let me just explain to you why there's this differentiation in the Masons, okay, as best as I can in the short few minutes I've got. So you all know about the Knights Templar. At least you should. Now, the Knights Templar were basically a group of knights that the Pope had at the time had christened, so to speak, had knighted, and their job was to protect the pilgrims going back and forth to the Holy Land, so they wouldn't get robbed by these different bandits and other things. Well, they then, uh, during that time, and it was also during the Crusades, like I say, I'm really compacting this for time's sake. They did an excavation in Jerusalem. Apparently, this is the way the history has come down. They did an excavation in the in Jerusalem, apparently underneath the Temple Mount or somewhere in that area. And what they found was, well, they found a lot of things, but amongst the things that they found, including treasures and some other stuff, were documents that proved the lineage of Jesus. And I mean his close family, including his wife and his children. And I would go further than that in this explanation, but I'm just not going to because I want you to hear the important parts. So the point is that they found out that there was a royal bloodline that came down from this character known as Jesus. They also realized that, as I have been talking about, that this entire Christian movement was focused around Greco-Roman mystery religions that were interjected into the original Messianic movement and into the, indeed, even the family of Jesus and his followers by the likes of people like Paul and Josephus and the emperors of Rome. So they found out all this information. It was kind of like, oh man, this is a lot different than we've been taught all our lives. Kind of like probably some of this has surprised you. But they kept it secret. They kept it amongst themselves. And as you know, they then started a banking system where they could people could deposit money in one place and then withdraw it in another. That was really the beginning of our current banking system. So, what did that cause when that came into effect? So and let me explain how this works. So, they knew that the Christian claims of Jesus and the whole twisting of the Son of God thing and all of that were false, but they kept it to themselves. But they knew it would put them at odds with the church, particularly the Pope. Uh, and unfortunately, wherever money's involved, you start, remember, the love of money is the root of all evil. You started getting this bifurcation in the Templar movement, as you know today. The Masonic movement in particular. The Templars weren't really Masons necessarily, but the Masonic movement and the Templars kind of fused in some areas. It's actually not across the board, at least as far as I can tell. But you still had Masons who knew the truth, and when they say that they worship Lucifer, they're just meaning, because Lucifer is nothing more, as I've explained in Isaiah, when it talks about Hillel ben Shakar, bright star, son of the morning, the Latin term that they substituted for that was Lucifer, which just means light bearer, which is kind of the same thing, not really, but close. So the name Lucifer is not really associated with the devil, and they say it can be, people that argue that all Masons are good actually is because they actually worship Jesus, the real Jesus, who is the true light bearer. Well, that's not entirely true, okay? And I hope I'm making this understandable as quick as I'm doing it. And I'm going to get back to the Templars in a minute. When you see people doing, and I'm not going to do the signs here, when you see them doing the all-seeing eye little thing, where they get the bloody eye or they close one eye or cover it or whatever, and they're involved in all of these things like you see at the athletic events with the type, the satanic type of rituals and things like that, and their movements in the political sphere and stuff like that. No, Ron Wyatt didn't find the Ark of the Covenant. Ron Wyatt's got some problems. I'll just say that up front. I'm not going to talk about him. But at any rate, so this bifurcation, this separation amongst the Masons actually occurred, actually amongst the Templars too. And I'm just telling you that right now. Again, and I've explained this many times, that there are good Masons and there are bad Masons. There are good Masons that understand the who and what Jesus was, and that's the secret, and trying to protect what was then called the Holy Grail, which is actually the bloodline of Jesus, is really what it is. It's not a chalice. It's not that at all. It's the bloodline of the Holy Grail, and that's why you'll see depictions of the womb and things like that, which are just to remind them that they're actually trying to protect the actual descendants of Jesus. Okay, that's really what it is. It's not a sexual perversion at all. As a matter of fact, it's an appreciation of God's creation of men and women and Jesus's bloodline. So it's not evil at all. But there is an evil side that took over, and as I just said, you see that in the people that cover their eyes, and in the situation with perverting sexuality and that kind of thing, because it lent itself to it, because it opposed the established church. Do you understand? Am I making myself clear here? No, Herb, that's not true. Okay, that's all baloney. But again, I'm not going to go there. He's talking about Ron Wyatt. I'm not going to talk about Ron Wyatt. Ron Wyatt stole from people and then used it for his own benefit. No, I'm not going along with Ron Wyatt at all. All right, not even in the least. So at any rate, I hope I'm making myself clear in the short time I have here. My point is that not all Masons worship the Lucifer that would be associated with the devil side, with Baphomet. Okay, that's not true. That was a false accusation by the church to justify them basically martyring all the Templars, killing as many as they could find. Jacques de Molay is one. For instance, the Protestants have a youth organization called the Society of de Molay or something like that, which is honoring him, which opposes the Knights of Columbus and the Catholic religion. Okay, and most Masons historically have been Protestants, historically, not Catholic. That's changed to some extent lately, but anyway. So I hope I've explained that a little bit more. When I brought up this X Factor person, yeah, he failed in those two ways, because he attacked the Knights Templar and he attacked Masons as a whole, which aren't the same thing. There are, like I say, these two lines, a good side and a bad side. But he did fail to cover that, because in effect, the Masons, there are those groups that do actually, in fact, worship the evil side. Okay, that they do. And you can see that extant today throughout the New World Order and the way that it's pressing forward. Those are the people that took the good Masonic principles and corrupted them for their own purposes. It's still a secret society. And that apparently is what this X Factor star was involved with. But he still didn't spell out, as I explained the other day, the basic bottom line of why, of part of their evil. Well, let's go back to the Templars for a minute, and let me give you, well, Templars were Masons. Well, that's debatable, and I'm not going to go there right now. I haven't got enough time to do that. Masonry does predate the Templars, it does, but not in the same way that you look at it today. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, that's what I'm trying to explain. So you have to look at their fruits, and I push that all the time. The fruits are the delineator to tell whether or not somebody is decent or not, and they can hide it, of course, but that's the delineator. So let me go back to the Templars for a minute and what happened here. As I mentioned, the Templars probably found some treasure. They probably found documents. They realized and they started this thing. They changed the Holy Grail from a goblet, from the Last Supper, and they correctly moved it over into the womb of Jesus's, first of all, of Mary, that you would know as the mother of Jesus, but more importantly, his wife. So he continued that bloodline down through, and that's what my book is about. And that's what they were about, protecting. And somebody asked me about the Maravingian Dynasty and the Cathars and all these other things involved in this entire time period here. And it's in my book, but not directly. The The research information is in there in the bibliography. But that's what they were actually protecting, was the royal bloodline of Jesus is really what they were protecting. And in the process of that, as I said, they obtained these riches. Well, the Catholic Church, when they realized what was going on, that this was in direct contradiction to the Catholics' claims of Jesus' celibacy, of the nature of his life and his crucifixion, and especially his extended family. Um, that did a couple bad things. Number one, they understood the right of succession in the royal line of Judah, and of course, as I've explained, the birthright of Ephraim through Joseph. They knew that. Well, they can't have a descendant of Jesus wanting to come back and claim his rightful place. So they had to destroy it. And the Catholics, even today, hate the Masons because they think that the Masons, and it has devolved into this, unfortunately, they think the Masons are counter-Christian across the board. Unfortunately, the New World Order, I'm just using that as an explanation, did grab the power center of that secret society, and that's the danger of secret societies. That's the danger of all the stuff that's happened in our government. The CIA, the FBI, keeping things secret causes them to become corrupt. Jesus said, I teach it openly. I tell you openly. He had secrets, and he gave them to his, he talks about the mysteries. Only you're supposed to know the mysteries, not them. So even there, it's available, but it's not in the same corruptible form. Money and power is where it gets corrupted, and that did happen to the Templars eventually, and the Masonic movements that were associated with them. And so today, uh, there's this rift in the Masonic movement, and there's also a rift, of course, between the Catholics and Protestants, partially over this Masonic issue. And the fact Protestants, it's lost on most of them now. Most of the Protestants don't know either that this initial disagreement came over the amount of power the Templars had with the money and their banking system, and their understanding of who the likely descendants of Jesus were, who would be able to claim these different bishoprics. For instance, the Bishop of Rome, the Bishop of Jerusalem, et cetera, et cetera. So I probably get more deep than that in it, but I don't think, yeah, two masonries. Yeah, for simplistic explanation, that's it. So, but the one that, again, I'm going to point out, and Roosevelt, you're on here. Tell me if I'm making any sense of this, would you? You're probably on your way to work or whatever, but if this is making sense to you, because I'm trying to do it so fast. I mean, I could have a board up here. I could have, my little decision matrix, and sort of like a genealogy line. Okay, thank you, Roosevelt. I could draw you the lines and show you all the different connections, okay? This guy, this X Factor guy, belonged to the bad side, okay? And there are excuses, as I've explained, for saying that Jesus is Lucifer, but on the bad side, they look at it as how you would view that, okay? That's how they view it. That Lucifer, the one known as Hillel ben Shakar, whose same name was thrown on that king of Babylon in Isaiah, but it has other prophetic overtones. That is the side that they worship. And you can see it. I mean, look what Prince Philip said. He wants to come back and be a virus and kill everybody, right? You see it in the wars that they've started. You see it in the degeneration and the corruption of our of men and women, and putting children out with these story time. These you know what I'm talking about. I can't say some of this stuff on here, but at any rate, the transgender movement and those types of things. Those are all corruptions coming from that other side. And I wish I could get into more detail, but I did feel like I owed you a little bit more explanation of what's going on. So the Masons that are basically going to come from a good point of view, um, they're not even going to get involved in this big argument with the X Factor guy. They're not even going to go there. All right. But unfortunately, the predominant group and the powerful group is the one that is doing the things across the world today that you see all these horrible things happening with. They are doing that. And again, power and money corrupts even the best of men, especially when things are done in secret. So that's yeah, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. It's good to read. There are problems with it. It's kind of a sensationalized um, story, investigation, but there's a lot of truth in there too. So it's a good thing to read. They get into some people that are currently in France. Of course, that thing was written back in the 90s or so. It gets into these groups, into these family members, and I'm not sure about those. Okay, most of that information was lost at the time that, or at least not readily available when the popes and the king of France came down on the Templars. A lot of that was just again further corrupted. You see how you infiltrate organizations. We've talked about that, right? How these secret societies will infiltrate other organizations. Well, they do that, and when they get inside, then they start to dismantle things and to disrupt operations and to corrupt the information. And so, yeah, that's right, the plural. So I hope all of that kind of lays to rest some of the issues that may be brought up, especially by people that may consider themselves on the good Masonic side. I'd still be very careful in today's situation when you get up into the higher degrees. I think there's probably going to be some very obvious problems. I don't know too many good Masons. Okay, I mean, as far as when I say that, what I'm talking about are those who really don't believe that the evil spirit is Jesus Christ. Okay, there are very few that don't believe that at the higher levels. The Statue of Liberty is a real good example of that concept, that Lucifer is in control. And if you look at the Statue of Liberty, it's an andro it's kind of like half woman, half man. The common thing in Baphomet, that's really what the Statue of Liberty is. It's a Masonic, the evil side Masonic deal with the evil Lucifer. And there's one of your proofs right there. Okay, it's all there. All right. Well, I've probably taken too much time, so I'll let you go. I just wanted to kind of clear that up. Again, where this X Factor guy came from with the all seeing eye, with the satanic rituals and symbols, with what they're doing in Hollywood and in politics and in pedophilia and in transgenderism and all of those things, he came from the bad side. Okay, so my statement about who he was covering up and didn't give you the last little bit of information applies to him. Okay, and where he came from, what he was involved with. That's not to throw everybody else under the bus that might be looking at it from the point of view that I've explained of the womb of Jesus's wife, and that being the holy grail, the holy blood and holy grail that Jesus's line had to be protected. And Christians will go nuts about this, okay? Because that and this X Factor guy even pointed out, and I kind of alluded to it in a subsequent video after he came out. And he was the one I was talking about, where he said that Jesus had to stay celibate because he was keeping his blood sacred, so it would so he could move over, take that blood would have an impact into the spirit world, and that's when I said that concept is hogwash. Okay, that's not true at all in any way, shape, or form. The Essenes, there were a group of them that considered themselves eunuchs or celibate, but these were by and large Nazarite vows that they took for a very short period of time. Very short period of time. It wasn't perpetual like in the case of Jesus' brother James. And there were even questions about his fanatic asceticism, and I've talked about that to some point, but he was definitely an exception. All right. And I explain that in my book why he did that. Partly because they were trying to prepare themselves for the war against Rome, I explained that, and that Leviticus says you can't go to war if you just got married because you have to keep your wife happy. There were some other purity regulations that I'm not going to get into here that were pushed so far that even my understanding is that Jesus probably said, "You guys have set up too many stakes. You've gone way beyond Torah." No, that's wrong. I think he was as critical of his family members who went down that that extreme line as he was against the establishment Herodian Pharisees, etc. Very likely, and that's why you don't hear much about him. The groups didn't want to talk that much about it. They took his information and they put it into their writings there in Qumran, but they never really quite went any further than that. And even those were changed. I just saw one the other day. Let me see if I can remember what it was. Yeah, the situation on the Messiah question. They bring up in the scroll that I read. They bring up that the Judah blessing where uh, Jacob Israel uh, gives the blessing to Judah and says, and the scepter shall not pass from Judah, nor a lawgiver between his feet until Shiloh comes. And even in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they still are pushing the Davidic line. And the reason for that, again, is because despite the fact that they had indications that this individual is going to die, the Davidic king is not supposed to die. He's supposed to defeat all his enemies, all of them. The Messiah is supposed to be victorious, the Davidic Messiah across the board. So they went there, even though they apparently they toyed with this other possibility. So originally Templar Knights were Catholic. Yeah, basically that's true. They worked for the Pope. They were commissioned, knighted by the Pope for what they were doing as far as protecting the pilgrims going to the Holy Land. And because they were in the Holy Land doing these excavations, they found this information, which was contrary to what the Catholic Church was teaching, and eventually it got them in trouble because they were found out. And it had to do with the money situation too. They were starting to press the Templars, like I said, where money was involved. They started to press the kings of Europe and the wealthy nobles started playing games with the currency, so to speak, sort of like what we see today. There's no gold in Fort Knox. It's all built on nothing. Well, the Templars started to do some of that. Not all of them, but some of them. I think most of them probably took their commission, not so much from the Pope, because then they knew the Pope was lying about it and the whole structure. But and I know that's going to piss off Catholics. I'm sorry. I'm talking history. If you want to believe, the stuff that the papacy puts out, that's your business. Or even as early as Justin Martyr, if you want to believe that stuff, that's okay. I'm just telling you what the history is. Okay, that's all I'm doing. So don't shoot the messenger. Okay, don't shoot the messenger. So that's basically the story. All right. Well, it's getting late now. I imagine David Knight's already getting started. So I'm going to go. Hopefully that cleared up a few things. Some of it's probably not as deep. Well, it isn't as deep as I would like to get. But look at my bibliography. If you really want to get into these things, then my bibliography is not complete. Those are the ones that I use just for the book. Okay. There are other sources that I use to put all of this together and understand what happened. And hopefully that clears it up. Okay. All right. We'll talk to you later out here. Thanks for bringing that up to me, Roosevelt. I didn't mean to be totally unclear on that the other day. And this probably isn't all that clear either, but at least it's a little better. It exonerates the good side and kind of defines the bad, which is really what I should have done. Okay. Out here, everybody. Take care.